Tonight on the world's most amazing videos. It's terror on the tracks when a 12 million pound freight train slams into a truck. Plus, a sudden explosion engulfs firefighters in a massive ball of flames. And a panic-stricken woman falls from a Ferris wheel, and so does her rescuer. Then, a good stunt goes bad, catapulting a daredevil through a wall of fire. And how did these people get rid of a 16,000-pound dead whale? They blew it up. These are the incredible true life stories of people who face their most desperate hour and live to tell about it. Everything you are about to see is real. Real people, real danger, real excitement. Get ready to experience the thrill of a lifetime. You are about to witness the world's most amazing videos.
Los Angeles, California. An ex-con has stolen a pickup truck and is trying to outrun the highway patrol. The police get a phone call from the suspect's mother, who tells them that her son is armed and dangerous.
He's running, he's scared, he's armed, and he's not afraid to use the gun.
The truck blows a tire, causing sparks to fly.
Oh, look at that, lots of sparks.
Then the man barrels across 5 lanes of traffic.
There he crosses back out of the diamond lane, all the way across. He sees the traffic up ahead. So now he, very, very dangerous pursuit here. Okay, it looks like he's getting off the freeway.
Officers fear the sparks will cause a dangerous explosion.
Lots of cross traffic ahead. The vehicles are stopped there.
Then the suspect forces his way through the cars.
He's boxed in here. Oh, he hits that cab. He hits that taxi cab. There are officers right behind him. There, he hits another vehicle, another collision.
With 4 police cars on his tail, the man runs the light at an intersection. Then he crosses over the divider and weaves back into his own lane.
He just misses a pedestrian as he crosses through that intersection.
Watch as he narrowly avoids hitting the man.
This is a pursuit that's very radical, and radical for this individual who is going to do everything he can to avoid arrest.
Officers are then informed that the suspect is on his way to his family's home.
Someone in the road right there trying to stop this pursuit. Somebody is confronting this vehicle here.
The driver's sister pleads with him to turn himself in. She tries to climb into the back of the truck.
She tried to get into the vehicle.
But the man speeds away, knocking her to the pavement.
When we saw this individual unconcerned with his own sister's safety, his actions did indicate to us that he would kill someone if he had to get away.
As traffic slows to a crawl, it looks as if the driver is trapped. But he decides to ram his way through.
He's getting out of the vehicle. Out of the vehicle. He got into that van. He just got into that van. It looks like he's carjacking another vehicle here. He was wanted for carjacking. And the vehicle's going. Now this is now a hostage situation. This is a hostage situation now.
The driver of the van, Tim Cole, had been watching the chase at home on television. He left to go to a job interview and is now trapped in this terrifying ordeal.
He hopped into that van. They're stopping. The vehicle is stopping at this time. The person is trying to get out. Oh no, he's being dragged!
Tim is thrown from the van, but his arm is caught in his seatbelt. He slams to the ground as the suspect speeds away. He escapes with only minor injuries. As night falls, the carjacker's rampage finally ends. The van spins out of control and slams into the center divider.
And this is going to come to an end right here. Suspect getting out. This is very dangerous. He's running across the lanes he's going across the center divider, and the officers are right behind him. He runs across the lanes of traffic. Of course, we've got 3 air units overhead right now following this suspect.
There's no escape, and the driver is forced to give up.
And there he is. You see him. He's on the floor.
2 hours after the pursuit began, the suspect is taken into custody. He is convicted of carjacking, assault with a deadly weapon, and evading arrest. and put behind bars. Charlotte, North Carolina. 175,000 racing fans are on hand to watch stuntman Brian Carson attempt a record-setting jump. To succeed, he has to hit this ramp at over 100 miles per hour and leap over 4 flatbed trucks, each packed with explosives that are rigged to erupt in a wall of fire. Then he must land precisely on the red X atop these shock-absorbing stunt cars. In all, the distance he must travel is 250 feet. Brian is ready. A camera mounted inside his car captures a dramatic angle just as he punches the gas on his final approach. But there's big trouble. Brian's jump is well short of the mark, leaving him trapped inside the mangled wreckage.
As soon as the car left the ramp, I knew I was in trouble. I knew it. I feel something was wrong. The car angled the wrong way. I knew the suspension broke somewhere.
Brian's car plunges through the gigantic wall of bursting flames. But instead of hitting the landing mark, he nosedives directly into an explosive charge.
I landed face first, engine first, right in this pyro mortar that was blasting off 100 pounds of explosives right in my face. That's like throwing a dart 100 feet into it and hitting a dime. You couldn't do it.
The force of the explosion and the crushing impact leave Brian fighting for his life. It takes emergency crews 40 minutes to pry him free.
I was pinned, my foot was pinned, part of the car had caved in on me, my left arm was shattered, broken, I was in a fog. It was a bad scene.
Somehow, Brian survives the deadly stunt gone bad. In his line of work, this daredevil knows that there is no way to predict when a disaster like this will happen.
All you can do is make your best calculations on the stunt and then hang on and hopefully it'll all work out on the other side.
Although the stunt didn't go as planned, at least Brian made it out alive. Evansville, Indiana. Responding to an urgent call, police officers arrive at a church parking lot. What they find is baffling. A car is circling the lot, backwards, and without a driver. A woman attending services thought she had put her car in park, but she actually left it in reverse.
And then when she stepped out, the car knocked her down and started doing circles in reverse in the parking lot.
Luckily, the woman isn't hurt, but the police still have to deal with a very serious problem. How do they pull over an unmanned car? The tank is full, and at this rate, it will take at least 3.5 days for the vehicle to run out of gas. After careful consideration, the cops devise a bold strategy. Officer Tony Hartwick approaches the car from inside the circle and smashes in the rear window with a crowbar. Then Officer Joe Fraser steps in to try to unlock the door.
That one don't work, huh? Let me just dive in there.
But the lock won't budge. After several unsuccessful attempts, Fraser is breathless and calls it quits. That's when Hartwick takes over, but he still can't get the door open, so he comes up with another plan. Hartwick climbs onto the roof and slowly inches his way towards the open door. Then the brave cop tries to lower himself into the driver's seat. Finally, he does it. Hartwick stops the car, removes the keys, and breathes a huge sigh of relief.
That's why you get the big bucks.
These veteran officers thought they'd seen it all, but this low-speed chase through a church parking lot is one they'll never forget.
In 13 years, this is the wildest ride I've had.
Montevideo, Uruguay. A fire rages out of control in a downtown industrial district. Firefighters douse the blaze with water as they inch closer, trying to determine if anyone is still inside. But what the brave rescuers don't know is that the building is full of highly flammable chemicals. The 8 men surrounding the doorway appear to be keeping the flames at bay. But then, they get an up-close view of hell on earth. The fire quickly spreads to a tank of turpentine. It explodes instantly. A giant wall of fire envelops the helpless men. The tremendous blast hurls the firefighters back onto the street as the burning hot fumes scorch their skin and melt their protective gear. Some of the men splash themselves with water, trying to ease the pain, while others collapse to the ground and gasp for air. Emergency crews rush the victims to nearby hospitals. Though the building was destroyed, no one was killed in this devastating inferno. The 8 injured firefighters recover from their burns and escape with their lives.
Coming up, a freight train plows into a stalled truck with the driver still trapped inside. Plus, a skier fights for his life when he plunges 2,800 feet down the slope of a jagged mountain.
Oh my God.
And a dragster careens out of control, sending its driver on the most terrifying ride of his life. Then later, it's panic at the amusement park when a frightened woman falls from the Ferris wheel. Can the rescuers reach her in time? Find out when the world's most amazing videos returns.
Lafayette, Indiana. Amateur cameraman Mike Skaggs has spent the day videotaping trains. But at a quiet railroad crossing just outside of town, he gets the shot of a lifetime. The 6,000-ton freight train barrels down the tracks. Then, as it approaches the crossing, it slams into a stalled semi, with the terrified driver still trapped inside. The train crushes the truck, shoving it down the tracks more than 100 feet, before finally coming to a stop. Engineers can hardly believe it when they discover that the driver is still alive. This trucker learned the hard way that an 18-wheeler is just no match for 12 million pounds of rolling steel. Valdez, Alaska, home to the World Extreme Skiing Championships, an exciting event that is both daring and deadly. Extreme skier Garrett Bartelt prepares for a risky run that few people would ever attempt, skiing down a 2,800-foot drop. But as he takes off, his plan to break a world record is shattered when his ski gets caught in a ridge. Suddenly, he loses his balance and begins to tumble out of control.
Oh, no!
Garrett is sent on a terrifying plunge down the face of the jagged mountain.
Oh, God. He's in big trouble.
Now, he's heading for a treacherous bed of rocks.
Oh, my God.
Oh, God.
A ski patrolman witnesses this gut-wrenching sight and quickly races to Garrett's side, expecting to find a dead man.
He's not moving.
It seems impossible that anyone could survive such a terrible fall. But he does.
He is moving. He's picked up his head.
Incredibly, Garrett is conscious, but severely injured.
He's got to be hurt. He was traveling like 40 feet upside down.
This was by far the worst crash I've ever had. It flashed through my head that this might be it. This is going to be more of a fall than I've ever taken before.
The rescuer bandages Garrett, then helps him to safety.
Feel your toes, they're like tight.
Then a waiting helicopter rushes him to the hospital. Later, when Garrett watches this shocking videotape, he is amazed by his death-defying fall.
I felt confident at the beginning of the run. I was skiing well. I was ready to do my first jump turn. My ski got caught in a little hole or a ridge that I didn't see, and I ended up toppling from there.
During the first 600 feet of his fall, Garrett tries to regain his footing. As he slams into the sharp rocks, his leg flies up over his shoulder and breaks in 3 places.
The force of it was pretty severe, so my leg actually ended up coming up behind me, and my boot popped me in the head right here above the ear.
Garrett knows that this accident could have been fatal.
I think it's pretty miraculous that I've lived. If I was a little bit unluckier, then I would have been dead.
Taoyuan, Taiwan. It's just another day at this luxury hotel. Surveillance cameras are rolling when 30 masked robbers storm the lobby swinging baseball bats and terrorizing the guests. As they burst through the doors, panicked patrons run for their lives. One man is chased outside and clubbed by 2 of the thieves. The assault is so ill-conceived that some of the thugs forget to conceal their faces. The siege rages on for 15 minutes. Then, the hostages are herded to the registration desk where they are robbed. Suddenly, the bandits notice that one of the clerks is hiding behind the desk. They try to back him into a corner, but he protects himself by grabbing a fire extinguisher. Then, he shoots it off, creating a diversion. The hostages escape, and the robbers, blinded by the cloud of chemicals from the extinguisher, are caught. The masked bandits are arrested and sent to jail. All because one brave man had the guts to fight back. Melbourne, Australia. The Winter Nationals auto race is underway. Racer Romeo Capitanio eases his nitro fuel dragster to the starting line. Romeo jumps into the lead, when suddenly his tires explode, causing the vehicle to flip over and burst into flames. Watch again. As the car catapults onto its side, Romeo's head scrapes along the racetrack. The dragster finally grinds to a halt, but Romeo is still trapped inside. And the car's high-octane fuel could explode at any second. Rescue teams rush in to extinguish the flames and pull him from the wreckage. Incredibly, Romeo is up and out of the car. His helmet has saved his life. As we look again, we can see just how close he came to death. Without warning, Romeo's rear tires burst into shreds, sending him careening into his opponent's lane. With almost no time to react, the other driver releases his chute, slowing his car and avoiding a devastating collision. Miraculously, both drivers managed to escape without injury.
Next up, a panicked woman hangs on for dear life when she takes a frightening fall from a Ferris wheel. Plus, a fireworks display rages out of control, sending terrified townspeople running for cover. Then later, how did these people get rid of a 16,000-pound dead whale? Find out when the world's most amazing videos continues.
Campo Grande, Brazil. A ride on a Ferris wheel takes a terrifying turn, leaving a young mother hanging on for dear life. For 5 frightening minutes, Maria de Fatima dangles precariously above the ground. At 40 feet up, a fall would almost certainly prove fatal. While trying to get off the ride, Maria's leg got caught in the gondola, but the Ferris wheel continued to turn, carrying her all the way to the top. Park employee Jose Carlos spots the panic-stricken woman. He knows that at any moment she could plummet to the ground. Risking his own life, he climbs up the spokes of the Ferris wheel to save her. But just as Maria is about to give up hope, Jose reaches her. He tries to push her back into her seat, but she slips from his grasp. Incredibly, she holds on as other rescuers arrive. Then, Jose begins to lose his grip. Suddenly, he slips and nearly falls. Refusing to give up, Jose grips the bar with his legs and regains his balance, as one of the men helps pull him to safety. Ignoring the danger, Jose joins the others as they work together to save the frightened woman. They struggle to lift Maria, but her leg is caught. Fortunately, a rescuer inside the gondola manages to free her. Then, Jose and the other men are able to push Maria back inside. And her terrifying ordeal is over. Later, when she is safely on the ground, Maria recalls her moment of terror.
I felt scared to death up there. I was screaming, "Get me out of here, get me out of here."
Although Jose could have been killed, he doesn't regret having risked his life to help a perfect stranger.
I look at her and it makes me so happy that she's alive. When I look at myself, I'm sure happy to be alive as well.
This is one horrifying day that both Jose and Maria will never forget. New Delhi, India. The nation's representatives have gathered to debate a highly sensitive civil rights issue. The House leader enters and calls the meeting to order. Suddenly, members of the minority party rush the bench, triggering a violent free-for-all on the assembly floor. Microphone stands are torn from desks, then hurled like spears, and used as clubs to beat opponents into submission. fistfights erupt, and chairs are turned into weapons. Frightened lawmakers run for cover and hide under the tables. The enraged politicians continue pummeling each other as the House leaders' desperate pleas to end the brawl are ignored. Finally, the battle is over. The beaten and bloodied victims are escorted out of the hall and loaded into waiting ambulances. India's leading newspaper declares this disgraceful scene a gruesome brutalization of democracy. But although badly bruised, both the brawlers and democracy survive. San Severo, Italy. An annual religious festival turns into a frenzied stampede as people start running for their lives. The citizens of this southern Italian town are happily parading through streets lined with firecrackers, but the crowd is too large, pushing hundreds of people dangerously close to the explosions. They panic and try to escape. This little girl is sitting on her father's shoulders just seconds before the fireworks reach them. At the last possible moment, he turns away to shield her from the flaming debris. As the fiery barrage ends, the fleeing villagers are engulfed in a cloud of smoke. When they emerge, their clothing is shredded and their ears are ringing. But amazingly, no one is injured.
Up next, police are lured into a trap, then ambushed by a fiery car bomb. Plus, a stunt goes bad when an actor accidentally hangs himself in front of a horrified audience. Then, later, one woman's frightening brush with death. When the world's most amazing videos returns.
Lima, Peru. A local acting troupe is performing their annual production of the musical Jesus Christ Superstar. Actor Jesus Bras is portraying Judas, the doomed character who hangs himself at the end of the play. He has performed the role many times before, but his big scene is about to become a real life and death drama. Jesus climbs onto the scaffolding and quickly places a prop noose around his neck. He waits for his cue and then steps off the platform. But the strain of the 12-foot drop causes his safety harness to snap. He begins to writhe in pain as the noose tightens around his neck. Unaware that he's really fighting for his life, the audience applauds his realistic performance. But Jesus is not acting. The rope crushes his windpipe, cutting off his air. His body goes limp. Stagehands race to Jesus, trying to lift him to safety. One man tries to untie the noose, but he can't get it off. Now, fellow actors join the struggle. Only seconds remain before Jesus will suffocate. Finally, they manage to loosen the rope and set him free. The trouble starts when Jesus hurries to hook the noose to the safety harness that's concealed beneath his costume. It's designed to prevent the rope from tightening around his neck. But in his haste, he doesn't attach it properly. When Jesus swings out on the platform and jumps, his weight takes up the slack and turns the rope into a real hangman's noose. Although he suffers serious injuries to his neck and throat, his story has a happy ending. Jesus makes a full recovery and returns to the stage. But he will never perform this dangerous scene again. Hortense, Georgia. A surveillance camera records two men entering a convenience store. One approaches the counter and tells the clerk, Tina Porter, he needs a tow truck. Then, he threatens her with a gun. But the gun accidentally goes off, firing point blank at Tina's head. Miraculously, he misses, but just barely. The bullet comes so close to Tina's head, you can actually see it pass right through her hair. Had she leaned just 1 inch to the right, the shot would have been fatal. As the assailant keeps the revolver pointed at the terrified clerk, his accomplice comes around the counter to grab the money. Amazingly, Tina regains her composure.
Right there, I can't open it.
Although unable to get into the safe, the crooks still managed to steal $415 from the cash register. Then, the robbers make their getaway. Because Tina stayed calm during this heart-stopping ordeal, her life is spared.
Thank y'all for not killing me. I got 2 babies.
A few weeks later, the robbers are caught and arrested. Now Tina's would-be killers are right where they ought to be, behind bars. Macau, China. A small car bomb has just exploded in a crime-ridden neighborhood. Police and news crews rush to the scene and approach the vehicle, searching for the cause of the blast. But suddenly, an even bigger explosion rips through the crowd. Reporters and officers are pounded by flaming metal. Police believe the first bomb was a decoy to draw innocent victims into a trap. Then another device was deliberately detonated. Panic ensues as the cops rush to get people out of danger. No one knows if another blast is headed their way. Ten journalists and 5 officers are injured in the bombing. But remarkably, no one is killed. Police arrest several members of a local gang believed to be responsible for the ambush. In their quest to clean up crime, these heroic officers nearly paid with their lives.
Coming up, a town races against time to save a helpless child trapped in a well. Plus, brave cops risk their lives to rescue a hostage held at gunpoint. Then later, how did these people remove a 16,000-pound dead whale from the beach? The explosive conclusion when the world's most amazing videos continues.
Shanghai, China. A mother is distraught when she learns that her 3-year-old son, Chen Shu, has fallen nearly 100 feet down this narrow water pipe. The townspeople band together, more than 200 farmers strong, to dig their way to the bottom of the well. But no one knows just how badly the child is hurt. Rescuers work tirelessly, desperate to reach the toddler. Finally, the digging stops. One volunteer reaches down into the well and pulls out the little boy. He's alive, but he's stopped breathing. In a frantic race to save Chen Shu, the man carrying him accidentally stumbles. But finally, the child is handed over to a team of waiting medics. Doctors quickly administer CPR, and miraculously, they revive him. But the boy is not out of danger yet. He is rushed to a hospital in critical condition. Mercifully, he pulls through. After Chen Shu's mother is reunited with her son, she is overcome with emotion. She will always be grateful to the villagers who helped save her little boy. Thomasville, North Carolina. A botched robbery at a local bank has turned into a dangerous hostage situation. Bank teller Tamra Smith has been forced at gunpoint into the holdup man's car. He threatens to shoot her as Police Captain Ronald Bratton approaches the vehicle.
He had the bank teller sitting on his lap in the vehicle. He was underneath the steering wheel. So they were pretty well confined there. He held a gun to the bank teller's head.
Wasting no time, Captain Bratton begins to negotiate with the gunman.
My objective was to keep him calm and just to keep him talking. The main thing I wanted to do was make sure that he didn't crank the vehicle up and try to drive off.
After 90 minutes, the armed man is still threatening to kill his terrified hostage, who was wedged between him and the steering wheel. Bratton fears he has run out of options, when suddenly he sees an opportunity and makes his move. Watch again. Bratton notices that the gunman's arm is wrapped around Tamra's neck, with his pistol pointing into her abdomen.
Our concern was if I reached in and wasn't able to grab the gun, then he could have fired the gun.
Bratton knows that lunging for the weapon will also put his own life in danger.
As I pulled his arm back outside the vehicle, he dropped the gun outside the car. If I wasn't successful reaching into the car, then yeah, I could be dead.
When the standoff is finally over, Tamra is distraught but unharmed, thanks to the heroic work of Captain Bratton and his fellow officers. The gunman is sentenced to prison. Florence, Oregon. The carcass of an 8-ton Pacific gray whale washes up on the beach. Normally, the remains would be hauled out to sea or buried in the sand. But these people have decided to take a different approach. Dynamite. They plan to blow the creature to bits so the tiny fragments can be consumed by seagulls and other scavengers along the shore. Blasting a whale to smithereens is a big story. So reporter Paul Lindman and a local news crew race to the scene to cover the event.
Dead on arrival, the beach near Florence.
There was really kind of a carnival atmosphere there that day. Townspeople from Florence had come out. There were kids out there. I can remember people up in the dunes above the beach putting out picnics and getting ready to watch the show of this tremendous exploding whale.
Engineers load a half-ton of dynamite underneath the massive mammal, believing this will blow most of it out to sea. Moments before the detonation, Paul interviews George Thornton, the man behind the bizarre plan.
Well, I'm confident that it'll work. The only thing is we're not sure just exactly how much explosives it'll take to disintegrate this thing.
So just to be sure, the engineers decide to add some more dynamite.
This seems like an awful lot of stuff. I mean, we're talking boxes of TNT.
With the explosives in place, curious onlookers are moved back a quarter of a mile from the site. Then, the command to fire.
All right, Fred, you can take your hands out of your hips. Here comes pieces of mine.
But excitement soon turns to terror as 200-pound chunks of whale meat plummet from the sky.
I am conscious of a sound that I haven't heard before, and it's going thunk, 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 and it increases in speed. And I realize the sound that I am hearing is pieces of blubber hitting the ground around me.
We suddenly were scared. It changed from sort of a carnival atmosphere into one of, my gosh, this is panic.
The hunks of rotten meat don't fly toward the ocean as expected. The crew used too much dynamite, causing the blubber to rain down on spectators as far as 1,500 feet away.
When it ended, we were covered with that whale. I looked down at a dark beige raincoat. It was bright pink.
The overwhelming sense is the smell. It is crippling. I mean, it's disorienting.
Incredibly, the only casualty is this car, its roof flattened by a massive slab of whale meat. Half of the carcass remains intact and has to be buried under the sand. It takes 2 months for the stench to go away, but the memory of the whale will last a lifetime.
Every time somebody comes up and says, "Tell me about the whale," yeah, I'll tell you about the whale. That's a story I'll never forget.